Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Chief Executive John Lee has for the first time responded to the fraud allegation involving a supplier of government-procured bottled drinking water. The city leader says he was very disappointed with the government logistics department's failure to serve as a gatekeeper during the process. Xin Trade Company is suspected of defrauding the government on the manufacturer that supplied bottled drinking water. This after being awarded a $52 million contract to supply bottled water for public office use on Hong Kong Island and the outlying islands. The Financial Services and Treasury Bureau, together with the Government Logistics Department, which is responsible for the procurement process, has set up an interdepartmental task force to review the mechanism. The Audit Commission will also look into the tendering process. Chief Executive John Lee weighed in on the incident for the first time on Saturday. Lee says he is concerned about inadequate gatekeeping efforts by the Government Logistics Department, the unit responsible for procurement on a daily basis. He says front and center now is to identify and address any deficiencies and loopholes as soon as possible to prevent a recurrence. The government has already terminated all contracts with Xin Trade and 6 other contracts with its affiliated companies. Lee says he has often stressed that every dollar the government spends is public money, which has to be used appropriately. But he says spending money wisely doesn't mean they just opt for the lowest price. Lee says it is important to assess whether the choice can generate the highest social value while meeting standards. The city leader notes that the incident also reflects the need for better oversight and vigilance among government officers, and a dedicated task force should make recommendations in this regard, with competency training on ways to identify counterfeit products and methods. He expects the task force to stipulate clear guidelines on conducting due diligence as well as extending the practice to other fund vetting processes. Chief Executive John Lee announced that he will deliver his 4th policy address on September 17th. He was speaking after making a district visit where he interacted with light public housing and public housing tenants to tap more views on his policy blueprint. Samantha Lee was there.
Chief Executive John Lee started the day by visiting a light public housing project in Nau Tau Kong. Accompanied by the Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho, the officials chatted with a family of 4 who moved in from a subdivided unit in Sham Shui Po. Mr. Chang, who welcomed the city leader to his home, said Lee was so friendly and asked how their life had improved. Chang said he was so grateful for their new home, which he said was so much better than their previous residence. The CE also inspected the facilities in the project site. While stopping at a booth selling second-hand goods. The idea of light public housing was initiated in Lee's first policy address. Its purpose is to provide a temporary home for those who have been on the waiting list for a public rental flat for at least 3 years. Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho said this project was completed in less than 1.5 years, breaking the record for rapid construction of high-rise buildings in the city. The CE then headed to the management office to learn about the occupation situation before he accompanied a family to unlock their new flat. Lee later posted on social media, saying he was glad to see the smiles on residents' faces, which was the goal of this housing policy. Just before the CE boarded his car, some residents said thank you. Mr. Sun said his quality of life improved after Lee took office. Lee then arrived at Lower Nau Tau Kau Estate, where he chatted with some residents. He promised that senior citizens will continue to enjoy the $2 transport fare concession scheme. The CE then joined Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Rosanna Law at the East Kowloon Cultural Center, where he learned about how the performance venue would promote cultural tourism and international cultural exchanges. Speaking to the press, Lee announced he would deliver his policy address on September 17th. Chief Executive also noted that the government has conducted at least 40 forums during public consultation for the coming policy address. He also expressed gratitude to the participants and vowed to consider their opinion carefully. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Tropical storm Kajiki has intensified into a severe tropical storm. The observatory says the standby signal number 1 will remain in force at least until 9 a.m. tomorrow, unless tropical cyclone Kajiki intensifies significantly. Hong Kong was extremely hot this afternoon. Temperatures in several districts reached 33 degrees Celsius or above. The weather forecaster says Kajiki is moving westwards and is expected to be closest to Hong Kong tonight, skirting around 500 kilometers to the south of the city. Hong Kong will see occasional squally showers and thunderstorms tonight and tomorrow. The fatal fire broke out in the afternoon at Meadow Apartment on Kings Road in North Point, leaving 1 dead and at least 5 people hospitalized. The deceased was an elderly resident in his 70s who sustained severe burns and later succumbed to his injuries. The flame erupted in the unit on the 14th floor. Firefighters rushed to the scene to douse the blaze. Dozens of residents were evacuated, with multiple suffering from smoke inhalation, including a 16-year-old girl who was sent to hospital. Some residents said the whole corridor was engulfed in smoke, so they had to crawl their way through, adding that they had to escape from the windows with the help of scaffolding workers outside the walls. Transport Department says lanes towards Causeway Bay near North Point's Northview Street were cordoned off because of the fire. U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell on Friday opened the door slightly to lowering a key interest rate in the coming months, but gave no hint on the timing. Powell has been under pressure to cut rates by President Donald Trump, but suggested the central bank will proceed cautiously as it evaluates the impact of tariffs and other policies on the economy. Nasri Karim with more.
Speaking at the Fed's annual economic symposium in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Powell warned of risks from rising unemployment and higher inflation. Powell suggested that with hiring sluggish, the job market could weaken further.
Our policy rate is now 100 basis points closer to neutral than it was a year ago. And the stability of the unemployment rate and other labor market measures allows us to proceed carefully as we consider changes to our policy stance. Nonetheless, with policy in restrictive territory, the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance.
The Fed has 3 more meetings this year, next month, in late October and in December. And it's not clear if any cut will take place at those meetings. Trump has repeatedly insulted Powell and has urged him to cut rates, arguing there is no inflation and saying a cut would lower the government's interest payments on its $37 trillion debt. He also told reporters he would fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook if she did not step down over mortgage fraud allegations. U.S. stocks closed sharply higher on Friday in response to Powell's remarks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average surged 1.89%, closed at 45,631.74. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite jumped 1.88% to 21,496.54. Nasri Karim, TVB News.
Russia's foreign minister says a meeting between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky is not being planned, casting doubt on whether there will be a first summit between the leaders of the warring countries. Sergei Lavrov told NBC News nothing can be arranged because Putin will only hold a conversation with Zelensky when some guarantees are met, and they are not there yet. Zelensky, meanwhile, blames Russia for the delay, saying Moscow is doing everything to prevent a meeting. These comments came as Ukraine marked National Flag Day with a military ceremony and hoisting of the blue and yellow symbol of independence from the Soviet Union. The president says this flag represents a dream and Ukrainians will not give our land to occupiers. He thanked the military for defending the nation. U.S. President Trump has been trying to set up a summit between Zelensky and Putin after he held talks with both last week. Russia has ruled out Ukraine joining NATO as well as other constraints ahead of any peace deal, just as NATO Secretary General met with Zelensky in Kyiv late Friday.
We are now working together, Ukraine, the Europeans, the United States, to make sure that the security guarantees are of such a level that Vladimir Putin, sitting in Moscow, will never, ever try to attack Ukraine again.
Russian President Vladimir Putin praised U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday, describing the leader as the light at the end of the tunnel for struggling Moscow-Washington relations. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Speaking at an event in Sarov, a closed city about 370 kilometers east of Moscow that has served as a base for Russia's nuclear weapons program since the late 1940s, Vladimir Putin heralded US President Donald Trump. The Russian president, addressing relations between the Kremlin and the White House, said, "With the arrival of President Trump, I think that a light at the end of the tunnel has finally appeared." Putin also commended Trump's leadership qualities, expressing hope the first steps had been taken to ensure the full-scale restoration of Russia-US ties. He said Russian companies were already discussing plans with American partners on opportunities for cooperation across the Arctic and in Alaska, in areas such as liquefied natural gas. Meanwhile, during an event to announce the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw will be held at the Kennedy Center, US President Trump unexpectedly pulled out a photo of him standing next to Putin during their meeting in Alaska. Trump said Putin sent the picture. He added Putin has been very respectful of him and the US. Trump also said Putin may be attending the 2026 World Cup games being hosted by the US alongside Canada and Mexico.
I was just sent a picture from somebody that wants to be there very badly. He's been very respectful of me and of our country, but not so respectful of others. But I'm going to sign this for him, but I was sent one, and I thought you'd all like to see it. That's a man named Vladimir Putin, who I believe will be coming, depending on what happens. He may be coming, and he may not, depending on what happens. We have a lot of things happening over the next couple of weeks. But I thought it was a nice picture of him. Okay of me, but nice of him. So that was very nice that it was sent to me. Okay?
Donald, TV News.
Welcome back. The Immigration Department said the passenger flow at the Hengyun boundary crossing in the first 7 months this year has far exceeded the design capacity. Improvement works, including adding e-channels and traditional counters, are underway. Celine Chan tells us more. Travel between Hong Kong and the mainland has become increasingly frequent in recent years, with land border crossings experiencing large crowds during peak periods like holidays. At the Hengyun boundary control point, the average daily passenger flow in the first 7 months of this year was approximately 78,000, rising to 91,000 on weekends and holidays, 3 times the designed capacity. To improve clearance efficiency, the Immigration Department completed optimization in the arrival hall last year, increasing the number of e-channels from 14 to 18 and conventional counters from 9 to 12.
To deal with the upsurge of the passenger traffic, our department will flexibly deploy our manpower to reinforce our control points. And for the hardware, we have already installed 4 extra e-channel and 3 extra counter at our arrival halls. For the future, we are now installing 4 additional e-channels in our departure hall, and it is expected to be completed and will put in force by the end of September.
Temporary counters will be set up during the construction period to handle the departure passenger flow. To manage the flow of travelers, the police have also enhanced the separation of individual passengers and tour groups at the public transport interchange near the crossing. A designated waiting area for tour groups has been established, and tour buses are only allowed to enter for boarding once all group members are present. A new signage system has also been installed to help travelers estimate waiting times. The Immigration Department reminded the public that the peak hours for departures and arrivals are from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturdays and from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Sundays. The public is advised to avoid traveling during these peak hours. The Immigration Department stated that they will continue to closely monitor the passenger flow at different border crossings and are studying additional optimization measures. Celine Chan, TVB News. Chief Executive of the Hospital Authority, Libin Lee, says a one-stop electronic platform for specialized doctor visits will be launched in a bid to streamline patients' consultation processes and reduce waiting time. Currently, some more stable cases have to wait more than a year for a consultation at specialist outpatient clinics. Lee says the rollout is expected to integrate into the HA Go app, with functions including the appointment booking and blood-taking time slot registration processes. The Hospital Authority hopes the new e-platform will help shorten the waiting time by a quarter. The world's leading authority on food security has declared famine on the Gaza Strip's largest city. Nasir Karim with more.
In a tented refugee camp in Gaza City, Palestinians are without food and being displaced again ahead of Israel's renewed military push. Rabia Abu Odeh says death is better than displacement. They are unable to move, unable to walk because of a lack of food, asking why are they doing this to us. The United Nations has for months been warning that the enclave faces imminent famine. According to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, the world's top authority on food security made up of 21 international agencies, famine is official in Gaza City and likely to spread.
Be in no doubt that this is irrefutable testimony. It is a famine, the Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. Yet food stacks up at borders because of systematic obstruction by Israel. It is a famine within a few hundred meters of food in a fertile land. It is a predictable and a preventable famine. A famine caused by cruelty, justified by revenge, enabled by indifference, and sustained by complicity. It is a famine that must spur the world to more urgent action, that must shame the world to do better.
The IPC says 3 conditions must exist for a famine to be declared: extreme lack of food, acute malnutrition or wasting, and daily deaths from starvation. Officials say more than 270 starvation-related deaths have been recorded in Gaza in recent weeks, with more than 500,000 people under threat. Israel has increasingly come under fire from countries including allies for the lack of food entering Gaza. While thousands of trucks with humanitarian aid wait at the borders, agencies say Israel restricts entry and fails to provide security from criminal gangs.
And that's the news. Stay tuned to the news roundup at 5 minutes past midnight tonight. Thank you for watching.